Obviously, you all know that water is critical for our survival. We can't go for more than a day, pretty much, without water. And the recommendation from the county and the state of Washington is that we are all prepared for a minimum of 30 days. So we ask that you store water for 30 days minimum and food for 30 days minimum. Generally speaking, the recommendation is 1 gallon per person per day, and that's pretty tight, but it will provide enough water for you to drink and cook with, and it'll also provide enough water for you to brush your teeth. And maybe every couple of days, take a little mini sponge bath. So if you're a 1-person household, you're looking at 30 gallons. If you're a 2-person household, you're looking at 60 gallons. Now, there's water all around us, but unfortunately, that's not very helpful. You cannot drink or cook with salt water. Also, some people have rain barrels put up next to their house. They collect rainwater. Rainwater is great for your garden, and it's great to flush toilets, but you cannot consume it. You can, if you bring it to a boil, then you've eliminated the microorganisms. But if you have an asphalt roof, you will get the toxins from the asphalt. So it's not recommended. You can, however, use the water that is in your hot water heater. So some people have on-demand hot water, but most of us have sort of the traditional 40 or 50 gallon hot water heater. And that water is potable. And whatever storage you end up doing, and we'll talk about the various storage options, the water in your hot water heater is the first water you should use. You should shut off the electric circuit breaker. You should really, after the earthquake, you should shut off your main circuit breaker. Because you're going to be without electricity for a long while, and you won't have remembered once the electricity comes back on again what you turned on and what you turned off. And when they have to repower the electric grid, if there's a huge draw on it, it often is not successful. So for safety reasons, you should turn off your main circuit breaker anyway. You should also shut off the home's main water line. The water pipes after the earthquake underground that feed your house are going to be broken, and there's potential for dirt to get into your water system. So shut off your main water line that comes into the house. Close your hot water heater's intake valve, which is up top.
What?
I forgot to tell you guys, we are recording this. So if you have questions, if you could, there are some little cards on the side table. If you could just jot down some notes so you remember what you wanted to ask, and we'll do questions and answer after each section. So you want to close the water intake to your hot water heater so that now you've isolated the water in your hot water heater. And then you want to open a hot water faucet somewhere in the house to let a little bit of air in so that the water can drain out of the hot water heater. Attach a hose to the bottom draining valve, preferably an RV food grade hose rather than a garden hose. Open the valve, you'll have a little bit of schmutz in there, a little bit of gravel and sand, and you can just discard that. It won't hurt you to drink it. And then the recommendation is that once the water is no longer hot, to add 8 drops of chlorine or bleach per gallon and let it sit for 30 minutes. That may or may not really be necessary. You'll be consuming it fairly quickly, but that's the CDC recommendation. So this is my water line that comes into the house downstairs. I have a storage room downstairs in the basement. And so you want to shut that off after the earthquake. Here is my hot water heater. So where you see the red arrow, it's always up top on the top of the hot water heater. That's where your intake comes, your water line comes into the hot water heater. That's the valve that you want to turn off. And then here at the bottom is where you attach your hose, or you can just put a pan under it or something. Some people don't know where the shutoff valve is for their main water line. And this is actually a very common problem. I being one of them, I had to learn where that was in my house. And a lot of people are uncertain or about their intake valve to their hot water heater. We have a lot of members on the emergency prep committee, and we will be happy to come out to your house, one of us, and go looking for both and show you where both are. So don't hesitate to ask for help. Now, there are some homes here in Cape George that don't have shut-off valve for their main water line. And we strongly recommend that you have one installed if you don't have one. This will come in very handy for all kinds of other plumbing issues, because otherwise you have to go to the street, then you have to talk to administration and the water committee, and they have to help you shut it off, etc. So everyone should have a shut-off valve for their main water line inside the house. All right, we're going to head right into storing water besides your hot water heater. Basically, there are multiple options, but I find two options the best. One is the 55-gallon drum. It's the least expensive and the most space efficient, and you can see it. It's back there on that little coffee table. And then we also have 5-gallon jugs. And these 5-gallon jugs, which you can buy pre-filled at Home Depot and other places, they are that's purified water, and it's sealed and it stores indefinitely. So I'm not talking about taking a used 5-gallon jug and going to Safeway or the food co-op and filling it up with water. I'm talking about a new 5-gallon jug that's pre-filled. And so with those, you don't ever have to change them out. It'll last for the rest of your life. So here's our 55-gallon drum with the plugs on top. They do make drums that have a spigot at the bottom. And so if you were to put it up on some kind of a platform, it'll be a little easier for the water to drain, but you have to secure the platform. You'll have to secure the drum no matter what. The problem with the spigot is, if you let's say you have it in your garage and you walk by and you inadvertently kick it, there goes your water. So generally speaking, also with the chemicals that we use, we can't have the water touch any metal. So generally speaking, I recommend against having drums that have a spigot. The 55-gallon plastic drum should be high quality plastic. Most of them are. HDPE stands for high density polyethylene. The other option would be high molecular weight polyethylene, but that is more expensive and unnecessary. So when you go research this, you will find that most of them are HDPE. You do not want to use any older recycled drums. So there's a place in Port Angeles where you can purchase reused or repurposed drums. They're a little less expensive. So this drum that you see over there is $85. And then of course you have to add taxes and shipping. The place in Port Angeles will sell them somewhere around 55 to 65 gallons, but they've had food products in them. They've had soda, milk, olive oil, and no matter how much bleach you throw in there, you will never get rid of all those food particles. And now you are at risk of feeding any microorganism that's in there. So I strongly recommend new ones, not any old ones. You need to avoid exposure to sunlight, so it looks pretty solid, that drum. And you say to yourself, well, there isn't really any light going to get through there, especially if it's in the garage. But when I filled up the drum, I could easily see that daylight was coming through because I have a couple of windows in my garage. And so any daylight, it doesn't have to be direct sunlight, can allow algae to grow. Now, your water here is pretty pure, as it is in Port Townsend, but you know, if you have a few algae that get in there and it's exposed to some daylight over a period of several years, you could have the development of algae growing in your drum, and the chemicals don't work. That's interesting. The chemicals work for viruses, bacteria, protozoa, but they don't work for algae. So you're going to have to put some kind of a tarp over your drum to protect it from sunlight, unless you have it in a truly dark place. You want to keep, once you've filled the drum and you've added the chemical, you want to keep it sealed. You know, don't keep opening up and go stick your nose in there and see what's happening in there. The other important thing is you want to use a food grade hose. So the garden hose is not going to cut it when you fill it up. The garden hose is full of stuff, dirt and bacteria and protozoa and microorganisms, and you're just going to flush that right into your drum. So you're going to have to purchase a hose that is dedicated for this purpose. And those are basically RV hoses, and they come in different lengths. And you'll have to figure out how far is it from the outside spigot to my drum? What kind of length of a hose do I need? And you also have to take into consideration, you will be draining this water about every 5 years. So, and it'll be a gravity drainage, generally speaking. And so just keep those two things in mind when you purchase the length of your hose. And then try to drain the hose as best as you can afterwards. And then don't use it for anything else. This hose is only for your water storage drum. You then want to secure your drum into studs or something so that during the earthquake it doesn't topple over. That would be a shame after all that work. The top will crack open and there goes your water. You'll need a special, what they call bung nut wrench, to open and close those plugs on top of the drum. And a manual siphon pump, and all of these things are on display. And I'm going to show you some photos. So here is my RV food grade hose. And so this is one of the things you can share with neighbors. Not every household has to purchase their own hose. Something to consider. Here is the bung nut wrench. I don't know why they call it that. I have no idea. But those little pointy things on the top, they open those plugs, and then you can also use it to open these super pail buckets, which are not all that easy to open. So it has dual function. Here's your hand siphon pump. The hand siphon pump, you screw it into one of the plugs, and you have to open the other plug a little bit to let air in. And the plugs on the drum have different threads. So you'll screw that thing in there and you'll say, well, this doesn't work. This just won't catch. Well, then try the other plug. And then you will pump it a few times to generate the suction. And then the suction starts, and once the suction goes pretty fast. It's quite amazing. And now your jug is full of water and you're going, okay, how do I stop this? How do I stop this? And so you unscrew the top little cap just a little bit to let air in, and then the suction stops. So here is kind of an example of what it looks like. So this is my setup in the garage. I have 2 drums. I have a UV blocking tarp over it. And then I just put a little plywood over it, so it's actually a work surface and I can put stuff on it, and make use of that space. And 1 strap in the middle of the drums should be good enough if it's anchored into the studs. So here is option B, 5-gallon pre-filled jugs that last indefinitely. The latest price at Home Depot is about $16 a bottle. So if you were to do 12 bottles, which gets you up to 60 gallons, a little more than the 55-gallon drum, comes out a little more, slightly more expensive than the drum. And it takes up floor space. So that's one of the issues. The 55-gallon drum is much more efficient space-wise. And you also have to secure these 5-gallon drums somehow so they don't topple over. The big benefit here is that you will never have to change out the water. This is a rack I found on some website, and it fits 12 bottles. So you get your 60 gallons, and it's 4 feet by 3 feet, 4 feet high by 3 feet wide by 1.5 feet deep. What's the problem with this?
Weight.
Weight, yeah. So you would anchor the rack, right? And I'm not savvy enough to put in drawing of straps. You would have to strap. First, you have to anchor the rack to the studs in the wall. Then you would have to figure out some straps to keep the bottles on the rack during the earthquake. But the big problem is each one of these bottles weighs 40 pounds. So let's say you're a young family with 2 little kids and you're in a little apartment and you have very little space. This may be the way to go, because you're young and you're strong and you can lift a 40-pound bottle from the top rack and bring it down to the floor. But for the rest of us, this is not really a practical solution. So Home Depot also sells these attachments to the 5-gallon jug. Obviously, you only need 1, and then you can pump the water out, and you can see over there the setup, and that it works like a charm. You might want to buy 1 of these, and that way you can then, when you might want to have 1 5-gallon jug and a 55-gallon drum. And then when you pump out of your 55-gallon drum, you can pump it into this 5-gallon jug, and you don't have to put 5 gallons in it. You can just put a gallon or 2 in it, so it's not too heavy. Or you might have some other container that you can pump the water into. So what I do is do bulk order of the 55-gallon drums. We've done this several times now in the last 2 years. And that really cuts down on the shipping cost. And on the back table are some sign-up sheets. If you're interested, you can participate in the bulk order. As long as we get an order of 8 drums or more, that's what really cuts down on the shipping cost. And then I also order the accessories. Uline also sells the wrenches. Uline sells the hand pumps. The RV hose you'll have to get elsewhere, Home Depot or someplace, as well as the tarp. Although Uline might have some tarps, I don't know, but I don't order those. So if you're interested in this, you can leave me your information in the back on those sheets. And if you're not quite sure and you want to think about it a little bit, as long as you let me know by Monday, Tuesday, you can send me an email. My email is on the handout, and I'll add your name and installation to that. This is another company that sells them. They sometimes have pretty good prices. And then, of course, Amazon, you can always check Amazon and see what they're offering. What I have found with Amazon is it varies. Sometimes they have great prices that go on for a few weeks. And then all of a sudden, I don't know if their stock has dropped or what. The price is significantly higher, but it's always worth checking. So here is what this comes out to be, one drum right now. Last year, we were able to get drums for $104, all inclusive, shipping, taxes, everything. Right now, depending on whether we have 8 drums or 16 drums, it's somewhere between 110 and 120. Siphon pump is usually around $20, the wrench is $10, and then the chemical kit is $25, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So the drum with the accessories comes out to $165, so it's a little bit less expensive than if you were to buy the 5-gallon jugs. Okay, so now we are supposed to put some chemicals in this water to make sure it stays safe. So you have purchased a new drum that has no microorganisms in it. You've purchased a new RV hose that is clean and sterile. Our house water is clean and sterile. And you say to yourself, why should I have to add any chemicals to that? Because I'm going to fill up the drum, then I'm going to seal it and nothing can get into it. And you're absolutely right. Good question. There is a couple in Utah that had a couple of empty 5-gallon jugs, and for giggles, they filled them up with tap water and they didn't put anything in them, no chemicals, nothing. They put them under their deck without a tarp. And 10 years later, they said they stumbled upon them. They remembered they had them down there and they said, let's go see what's happened to that water. And they drank the water and everything was fine. So it just goes to show you how good our water is. Nevertheless, I don't recommend that. I advise CDC and FEMA recommendations. So you want to put the chemicals in. And fortunately, you don't have to use bleach and change the water out every 6 to 12 months. We now have chemicals that guarantee the water for a minimum of 5 years. And one of them is Aquamira. It's in that little box over there. And the other is what's called a water preserver concentrate. It's basically the same as bleach. The advantage of Aquamira over the bleach or the water preserver concentrate is that it doesn't have any funny tastes and it doesn't have any funny byproducts. So it's a better product. It tastes better. And it's the same cost. So here's your Aquamira kit, also known as chlorine dioxide. So it comes with 2 bottles. So you have set up your drum, you have filled it with water up to about 2 inches to the top. You want to allow a little bit of expansion and contraction of the water. You don't want to fill it all the way to the top. And now you take these 2 bottles, you take a little jar of some kind, measuring cup, you pour both bottles into the same cup and you let it sit for 5 minutes so that it activates, and then you pour it into your drum. And then you close your plugs. Water preserver, you don't have to mix 2 bottles. It also is guaranteed for 5 years. You have to use it within 6 months though. So the Aquamira, if you purchase this for, let's say you place it today and you pick it up in a couple of weeks when it has arrived. And now you're going on vacation and then you forget about it. And now it's November and it's been more than 6 months and you're going, my water preserver concentrate is no longer good. I have to buy a new one. The Aquamira lasts for 4 years after you purchase it, if you haven't opened it and if you haven't mixed it. So there's another little advantage there. Bleach still works. Once you open your bottle of bleach, then it becomes less and less potent and less active. And after a year, you really shouldn't use it anymore. I mean, if you want to clean your counter surfaces and all that with that, that's fine, but you don't really want to use it for water storage anymore. There are water filters, and this information is on your handout, that filter out all microorganisms. Bacteria, viruses, protozoa, algae, everything. There are some that cost around $200, but they don't filter out the viruses. You go up to around $400, $500, now you get everything. And this filter is self-cleaning, which is really, you don't need a bunch of cartridges that you have to have and store. You can just use the water that you just created, and every so often you flush that through and it's self-cleaning. So these are really brilliant inventions. They don't, of course, filter out the salt in the water, and they don't filter out chemicals. So after the earthquake, we're going to have oil and gasoline in the ocean. And so, you know, for that, these filters are only good for to prevent infectious diseases. And with that is the conclusion of our water storage presentation.